It began as a simple weekend visit between a father and his 3 little girls. But when they never came home, the silence that followed turned into every mother's worst nightmare. Days later, deep in the woods of Washington, searchers would uncover a scene so chilling it defied belief. 3 children, bound, suffocated, and discarded, and their father vanished into the wilderness without a trace. Who was Travis Decker? How could a man once trusted to protect his daughters become the very monster who destroyed them? Tonight, we unravel the heartbreaking story of the Decker family, a tale of love, betrayal, and a manhunt that gripped an entire nation. 3 little girls, full of laughter and innocence, left with their father for what was supposed to be a simple weekend visit. They never came home. What unfolded in the days that followed would shock not only their family but the entire nation, exposing painful cracks in the systems meant to protect children and raising haunting questions about how a father could turn into the very monster his daughters should have been shielded from. This is the story of the Decker family, a tragedy etched in betrayal, silence, and unanswered questions. Whitney and Travis Decker once shared what looked like a normal life. They were young, married, and soon blessed with 3 beautiful daughters. Peyton, the eldest at just 9 years old, Evelyn at 8, and little Olivia, only 5. To those around them, they were like any other American family trying to make things work. The girls were everything a parent could dream of: bright, playful, and full of personality. Peyton was thoughtful and mature beyond her years, often stepping into the role of protector for her sisters. Evelyn was a burst of energy, a child who could light up any room with her humor. And Olivia, the youngest, was sweet and adored, doted on by her older sisters who treated her like their little treasure. But behind the smiles, their parents' marriage was falling apart. By 2022, Whitney and Travis had divorced, leaving Whitney as the primary caregiver in Wenatchee, Washington. She poured her life into raising the girls, keeping their lives steady despite the turmoil. Travis, meanwhile, struggled. At just 32, he was a U.S. Army veteran who had once proudly served his country, including a deployment to Afghanistan in 2014. He came back a different man. Friends and family noticed his paranoia, his instability, and his growing mental health struggles. He was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and appeared to drift further away from stability. Travis often lived out of his truck, jobless and adrift. Whitney worried deeply about his state of mind. She filed court petitions, raising concerns about his ability to safely care for the girls during visits, especially overnight. But the courts were slow. On paper, Travis was still their father, entitled to visitation. To Whitney, he was a risk. To the system, he was simply another parent trying to remain in his children's lives. On May 30th, 2025, Travis picked up his 3 daughters for what was supposed to be an ordinary weekend. Whitney expected to see them back by evening, but the hours stretched on, and her calls went unanswered. Her messages never delivered a reply. As the night grew darker, the fear in her chest hardened. Something was wrong. When the police were called, the initial response was chillingly casual. It was considered a custodial issue, not a disappearance, and no Amber Alert was issued. Whitney pleaded, but to no avail. For days, there was silence. Then, on June 2nd, horror revealed itself in the woods near Rock Island Campground outside Leavenworth. Searchers found Travis's white pickup truck sitting abandoned. On the tailgate, 2 bloody handprints smeared across the metal. Inside, his belongings lay scattered, eerie reminders of the man they were hunting. And nearby, in the thick trees, the bodies of Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia. They had been bound with zip ties. Plastic bags had been placed over their heads. The coroner's report revealed suffocation as their cause of death. 3 sisters, betrayed and murdered by their own father. The scene was devastating, but Travis himself was nowhere to be found. He had vanished into the wilderness. And so began one of Washington State's most intense manhunts. For weeks, law enforcement flooded the forests and mountains. They brought in helicopters, drones, K-9 units, even survival experts to track him. Travis wasn't just a fugitive. He was a trained Army veteran with survivalist skills, a man who knew how to disappear in the wilderness. Every discovery, from food wrappers to scattered belongings, brought hope and dread in equal measure. Was he alive? Was he armed? Was he watching from the shadows? To the public, the idea of a killer father hiding in the woods was haunting beyond imagination. Meanwhile, Whitney's grief became a public wound. She stood before cameras, speaking not of the brutality of the crime, but of her daughter's lives, of birthdays they would never have, laughter that had been stolen. Her pain turned to anger as she questioned the system that had failed her girls. Why hadn't her warnings been taken seriously? Why had the Amber Alert been denied at first? Could her daughters have been saved? Months passed with no answers, and many feared Travis would never be found. Then, in September of 2025, hikers stumbled upon human remains in a remote wooded area south of Leavenworth. DNA confirmed the truth. It was Travis Decker. His body was so decomposed, scattered by animals and weather, that investigators could not determine the exact cause of death. It may have been suicide, exposure, or an accident. The truth of how he died is a secret the forest will keep forever. But what remains certain is the devastation he left behind. 3 young girls silenced, a mother broken, and a community forever haunted. Whitney continues to speak their names, not just in grief, but in hope. Hope that their story forces change. She calls for reforms in how custody disputes are handled, how visitation rights are weighed against warnings of instability, and how quickly alerts are issued when children vanish. For many, the Decker tragedy has become a case study in systemic failure, a painful reminder of how blind trust in paper systems can cost real lives. The story of Travis Decker is not just about one father's descent into darkness. It is about how fragile safety can be, how easily the signs of danger can be ignored until it's too late. Peyton, Evelyn, and Olivia should have grown up, lived their dreams, and built their futures. Instead, their lives were stolen by the one person they trusted most. And as their mother reminds the world of their light, the lingering question remains: how many warnings must be ignored before change comes? This is Tales of Crime and Mystery. If this story has shaken you, if you believe these little girls deserve to be remembered, join us as we continue to uncover the darkest crimes and the mysteries that haunt us. Subscribe and never miss the stories that demand to be told.